Yo yo yo, it's VenomousStare back with more StarCraft 2, and I'm about to go to DreamHack Austin, so I am very excited because some of these guys that I have been casting for a long time, I'm about to get to see in real life. I've met a lot of them before, but it's always nice to see these high-level players in real life and get to stand right behind them as they take on other high-level players. I mean, streams are great, these videos are great, I'm sure you guys enjoy them, especially if you're subscribed, which if you are not, you definitely should be. But nothing really competes with going to a LAN and getting to talk to these guys. Last time I went to DreamHack Austin, I spoke to Snoot, the top tier European macro Zerg, and he actually talked to me for like 10 minutes, a long time, about how to defend against Phoenix and ZVP, which Phoenix always tear me up. And I remember Idra, as we see a 2-gate opener here, for the Protoss player, Gain, who is just a ladder toss. He's not like a pro gamer that I know of, unless it's someone's Smurf. So I don't really know how this guy plays, but I remember that Neuro plays very well. He often goes for it macro styles. Of course, he has already taken his natural, and this drone is going to peek around at the natural before going to the third. Now, why did he do this? Why did he run his drone over right here before just taking his third? Well, he wanted to check for a cannon rush, and cannon rushes aren't really very popular. Usually we would see Protoss players back in the day, they would go for Nexus first into Forge, or if they wanted to be safe or do aggressive cannons, Forge into Nexus. Now we really see Gateway into Nexus a lot. Sometimes we see Nexus first into Gate, but rarely do we ever see Forge openers. In fact, as we see double Adept opener here for Gain, in fact, the Forge opener has been almost completely phased out. And one of the main reasons for this is the existence of the Ravager, as a few drones start to meander out to the bases of Neuro. Now, the Ravager is so good at defending cannon rushes because really, when you think about what the Ravager does, as we see the Adept pressure come out very early on in the game, keep in mind, you know, the Zerg's not going to have a Roach Warren by now. Neuro wants to not even be mining gas after he got his first 100. Notice he didn't mine a single ounce of gas extra. Great job there. But this is annoying because now Neuro is going to have to make Lings. And he'll inject there. This is tricky. Adepts, whenever there's two of them, they one-tap workers. So you can lose a shitload of workers if you're not careful. 4 Lings come out here for the Zerg player, but a Telly into the main, and he's going to have to pull his drones in there as well. If we go to workers lost, he's only lost 2. So the key to this is to just continuously run the drones away. New players, you might be tempted to not run drones away when you're being harassed or dropped like this. You might think, oh, I see 2 more Adepts come up. Oh, it's more of a pain in the ass to move drones around and reallocate them than, you know, just defending. As we see Neuro actually going to have to pull here a little bit. See that pull? He wasn't intending to kill the Adepts with the drones there. He just wanted to temporarily trap them to set his Lings up. And 2 more phase shades get cancelled as these Adepts continue to shut down the main. Now notice that he keeps probing the natural with shades and then cancelling. Now that Ling speed is finished though, Neuro should be able to clean this up. And the Protoss player who's gone for a Robo is going straight into a Warp Prism. So this is pretty damn common. We see not necessarily Robo openers like this. A lot of times honestly it's Stargate, because Stargate is so good. Which is why I spoke to Snoot for 10 minutes about how not to lose a bunch of drones and Overlords to Phoenix. But the reason that we see Robo a lot is because Robo is kind of this wonderful multi-purpose tech path where Protoss, they can go into the robotics and really have a lot of options. So what I mean by that is they can go Immortals, which is an incredibly powerful mid-game unit, and honestly it techs into the late game very well, but it does a lot of damage to armored units, which Roaches are. And then they can get a Warp Prism if they want to do harassment. And potentially, most importantly, they can crank out these observers, which give them vision and detection. 3 spores on the way here for Neuro. Now let's look at Neuro's vision. He sees the Robo. So the newbie player, as we see the Immortal, as well as a couple of Adepts get loaded up into the Warp Prism, a newbie player might ask, well, VenomousStare, if he opened Robotics, why would he open Spore? Because you think, well, generally the Stargate is the opener that you want to build spores against, or the DT is the opener that you want to build spores against. Well, the answer to that question is, the metagame right now in ZVT pretty much dictates that you should be aiming to get spores pretty much no matter what. As we see a creep tumor go down here, and Neuro is going to try to defend this, but an Immortal pops out, and Immortals do a lot of damage, and notice the Protoss player focus fires the creep tumor there. Great job. And that is very important because now this little juncture between the natural and third will not be connected with creep. Neuro runs his drones away. What I was saying earlier about new players, you always want to run your drones away when you're being harassed and you start to lose them. You don't want to get lazy and just kind of lose drones. I used to do that for so long, but I stopped doing that, and that is the correct way to play. Notice anytime Neuro's drones are under duress, he bails them out. He doesn't sit there and lose them even if he's defending the drop. Might seem really, really obvious to a lot of people, but it's a really common mistake, as you see this Immortal might go down, and the Warp Prism is still alive, so that was peculiar. But I've seen a lot of new players, if they're being dropped, the idea of having to like run the drones somewhere and remember to send them back to mining and put 3 in each gas is too much for some people. But it's definitely worth it, trust me. What do we see in Camp Protoss? Well, a hefty amount of gates and no third with lots of sentries. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the Soul Train. As Neuro is going to scout this, incredibly important because those lings that he had running around not only look for the third, but look for an incoming move out. So this push was popularized by a Korean Protoss named Startail Parting around the end of Wings of Liberty. The push involves a Warp Prism, 2 or 3 Immortals, and lots of sentries. And essentially, you want the Zerg to go roach, and you want to brutalize the Zerg with excellent sentry force fields and incredible Immortal damage. Now, this all-in has received a significantly smaller amount of play in Legacy of the Void due to the fact that the Ravager pretty much takes away all the strongest points of this all-in. And since he's about to attack, I just want to pause it briefly. I hate to do this, but we really need to talk about what's going to happen. So, the Protoss player's objective here is to push into the third and throw down force fields to segment the Roach army to where it can never properly engage. Now, if you go back and if you really want to watch Parting in his prime, go watch Startail Parting versus Liquid Ret on Ohana. If you just search that phrase, it'll be like the first vid that comes up. And Parting does this exact build. Of course, there's no adepts because it's fucking 2012. But you see in that game that Parting is consistently using the force fields to split the Zerg army in half, crush the front half of the Zerg units, while the clunky Roaches behind the force fields are unable to attack. So I'm going to pause it or unpause it here, and one thing that we need to really keep an eye on is the fact that since Ravagers are already out, Neuro is going to be able to drop the force fields down and prevent himself from being endlessly abused by force fields and unable to take a good engagement, which is what happened when Parting was crushing so many good Zergs. So the Protoss is going to push in here, kind of haphazardly because the sentries aren't here. Neuro has a nice spread, and when I zoom out, I feel like I should be able to zoom out even more. The sentries get flanked there! Beautiful move by Neuro as you really want to bait out force fields. The Protoss is forced to move up here into the choke, and suddenly Neuro is force fielded off from his third, but oddly enough, his natural and his main are going to be able to reinforce, and the Ravager Bile can drop down at any time, and the Warp Prism goes down. That is huge, because now the Protoss can't reinforce, and suddenly the wind has been taken out of the sails of the Protoss, because Corrosive Biling that Warp Prism guts this push, and suddenly the Sentry abuse doesn't look so good now that Zerg can fight back, does it? And Neuro is really stomping this all-in out because there's no third, there's no forge, and wow. I guess Neuro just showed us why we don't see Immortal Sentry pushes in ZVP so much anymore. So to recap how the game ended, we saw some nice Adept harassment in the early game, but with equally good defense. And then we saw the Legacy of the Void variation of the 7-gate Immortal all-in that Startail Parting popularized. And ultimately, Neuro defended it beautifully with Ravagers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my content, I'm going to be going to DreamHack this weekend there is a potential I might be able to get a few interviews with some of these legendary players that you've seen on my channel. It'll come down to whether they're willing to do it or not. I've conducted hundreds of interviews. If you didn't know, I'm a journalism major in school, in college, in school, Kappa. I'm about to graduate, so I know how to do an interview, and believe me, I've watched enough Artosis to ask the right questions. So, subscribe, click the bell notification icon, and check out Neuro, because he's a legend.